Village of Dalton is more than $3.5 million in the hole. Mayor Tiffany Henyard is accused of misusing money, and today, she's nowhere to be found.
Very hard in the difficult circumstances to get as much information as we could to share with you.
She thinks she's going to jail. I'm also a former Cook County Sheriff for the Department of Corrections, and I suggest that she go and take a tour of that facility so she can see what's in.
Mayor Tiffany Henyard has become the center of a storm of controversy and scandal in Dalton, Illinois, as her political career continues to unravel under the weight of corruption and misconduct accusations. Her path to power was anything but typical. Following the untimely death of Mayor Frank Zuccarelli, the town's Board of Trustees was tasked with selecting a replacement to finish his term. However, the process quickly became chaotic as time ran out and no consensus emerged among the board members. Amid this confusion, Henyard, a largely unknown figure at the time, was nominated at the last minute by trustee Christopher Gonzalez. Gonzalez, hoping the urgency of the situation would force a decision, pushed for her nomination. Her appointment made under such unusual circumstances led many to suspect that it was driven more by political maneuvering than merit. The rush swearing in left the town's residents questioning the legitimacy of her selection. At her first official meeting, Henyard presented herself as a dedicated public servant, promising to serve the people of Dalton and ensure fiscal responsibility, echoing the same vows made by her predecessor. However, it didn't take long for her tenure to be marked by tension, poor decision-making, and a growing animosity toward those who had helped elevate her to office. Henyard's leadership quickly became defined by her authoritarian style and an inability to collaborate effectively with other officials. Her first moves as mayor included dismissing key figures such as Jessica Jones and Stephanie Weidman, which appear to be politically motivated rather than based on merit. These abrupt firings raised concerns and fueled rumors of internal power struggles within the town's leadership. Henyard's interactions with other elected officials became increasingly erratic. Henyard's office. These documents, which contain sensitive personal information such as names, addresses, social security numbers, and health data of residents seeking assistance with tax exemptions and property assessments, had been mishandled. This breach of security raised serious concerns about Henyard's competence in managing the town's affairs and maintaining the trust of Dalton's residents. As Henyard's political career continued to spiral, her relationship with the public and fellow officials became increasingly strained. Allegations of corruption, financial mismanagement, and personal vendettas began to surface. Some accused her of using her position to settle scores and pursue her own interests rather than serving the people who had elected her.
Confidential, sensitive papers that were in a common area.
This morning, some of those documents were gone.
Amid growing scrutiny and controversy surrounding her leadership, Tiffany Henyard has found herself at the heart of an escalating scandal, struggling to defend her actions with increasingly desperate and at times perplexing responses. When Assessor Stone and other critics raised concerns about the relocation of the assessor's office and a lack of official documentation justifying the move, Tiffany dismissed their objections as exaggerated and trivial. She claimed that the relocation was necessary due to the heat impairing her ability to work. However, her critics weren't convinced, especially as there was no formal announcement or explanation for such a significant change. Despite the mounting public backlash, Tiffany insisted that the move was part of a broader effort to prioritize citizen services. However, this defense quickly became controversial, as many residents saw it as a weak excuse, especially given the growing dissatisfaction among the community. What made matters worse was the response from Tiffany's supporters. Rather than rallying behind her decisions, some of her allies began making their own pointed criticisms. One supporter suggested that the local media should shift its focus from criticizing the township's management and instead celebrate the township's receipt of the Government Finance Officers Association GFOA Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. This attempt to shift the narrative from criticism to praise was seen by many as insincere, as the community's increasing discontent could not be easily dismissed by claims of success. Tiffany's responses to the mounting criticism began to take strange and unconvincing turns, blending defensive arguments with spiritual overtones, which only served to further alienate many residents. As public frustration continued to grow, rumors began circulating that Tiffany was failing to live up to the responsibilities of her office. Whispers of incompetence and dishonesty began to spread, fueling the already hostile environment surrounding her administration. One of Tiffany's more unconventional allies, Keith Freeman, took a far more aggressive approach in defending her, publicly rebuking the media for not portraying Tiffany in a more positive light. Freeman claimed that the township's achievements were being ignored in favor of negative reporting, calling critical stories hit pieces and urging others to verify the township's financial reports as evidence of its successes. His comments, which mirrored Tiffany's increasingly defensive stance, suggested that her team was attempting to reframe the administration's difficulties as part of a divine plan. Freeman even went so far as to say, "God doesn't make mistakes. He put the right person here who knew who would do the work, take the lashes, and have the strength to endure it all," presenting Tiffany's struggles as a moral test of strength. This attempt to invoke spirituality was clearly intended to frame Tiffany's battle as a righteous cause. However, it left many skeptical, particularly in light of the lack of transparency and accountability surrounding her leadership. As public pressure continued to mount, Tiffany adopted a new strategy of holding private meetings and restricting media access. When reporters were finally allowed to attend some of these meetings, they often found themselves abruptly cut off, creating the impression that Tiffany was deliberately avoiding responsibility. Meanwhile, Freeman remained steadfast in his defense of her, reiterating that there was no misconduct and accusing the media of focusing on gossip.
Example of Supervisor Henyard's promise of come to the good things, there's so much good going on that we want to tell you about. When we show up to report on it, we were denied access.
So that's what happened to our reporter, and then at the next meeting that you attended, we heard this.
Because y'all don't want to do the research, y'all keep listening to people, and no one's showing you fact. They keep telling you fiction, fake story, fake news, like for real, stop it. But go check out if you really want to know the truth, so you can understand what it is that we're fighting.
Yeah, Tiffany Henyard's time as mayor of Dalton, Illinois has become a tumultuous saga, overshadowed by a series of legal battles, controversies, and a growing public outcry. Her leadership, once filled with promises of progress, has instead been marked by corruption, financial mismanagement, and a disregard for transparency. The controversy surrounding her rise to power, along with a series of questionable decisions and actions, has tarnished her reputation and left the community of Dalton disillusioned and distrustful. Henyard's tenure began under peculiar and rushed circumstances. After the sudden passing of former Mayor Frank Zuccarelli, the Dalton Board of Trustees found themselves under immense pressure to swiftly appoint a replacement. Despite being a late entrant to the race, Henyard was nominated and quickly voted in. However, her appointment was not without controversy, as many believed that her nomination was more about political maneuvering than merit. Her leadership quickly became clouded by scandals with early missteps that set a negative tone for her time in office. One of her earliest mistakes was hiring a criminal inspector without board approval, a move that raised eyebrows and raised concerns about her respect for the proper channels of governance, adding fuel to the fire. Henyard also enlisted Dalton police officers for personal security, a decision that seemed to blur the lines between her public office and personal affairs. These actions, among others, prompted skepticism about her ability to lead responsibly and fairly. As Henyard's time in office progressed, the controversies only worsened. During a township meeting, local resident GIS sharply criticized Henyard for a failure to involve the community in key decisions. What specifically pointed to a controversial mental health tax proposal that was rejected by voters, noting that Henyard had promised more civic engagement, yet ignored the voices of the very people she had pledged to serve. The disconnect between Henyard's promises and her actions began to create a growing sense of frustration within the community. Others who had once supported Henyard, such as Trina Diaz, began to voice their frustrations more openly. Diaz accused Henyard of mismanagement and unprofessional behavior, and even alleged misconduct during official trips. She specifically called out trustee Andrew Holmes, claiming that Henyard had excluded key board members from important meetings and made decisions without consulting others. These accusations only added to the growing sense of division and distrust within the local government, in addition to strained relationships with fellow officials. Henyard's administration became embroiled in a series of lawsuits, each adding fuel to the fire of her increasingly unstable position. Among the most notable was a lawsuit filed by a Dalton police officer who had been part of Henyard's personal security detail. The officer alleged that Henyard had misused city resources for personal security purposes, adding concerns about her financial stewardship. Another lawsuit came from a former employee who claimed wrongful termination.